the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me from volreport.com, it's Ryan Sylvia. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're in Lexington, Kentucky right now, ready for the men's team to get going on Thursday, and then we'll travel up to Columbus on Friday. But it was good to see the court today. Got to see Tennessee shoot around, so it feels like March Madness time. You see the logos and everything sitting around, waiting to go into the locker room and stuff. It's the best time of the year.
Anytime you can hear Rocky Top blaring in Rupp Arena, it's always a good time.
Yeah, it's funny. You see that. You see the blue and white checkerboard floors in Tennessee's walking on them, the pictures of Bruce Pearl talking with Zakai and Jahmai and stuff. It's been a funny little trip already at Lexi. It's weird when the host sites are college towns. Like could you imagine Kentucky coming to Knoxville? Like it's just a funny thing that, some sites have to deal with.
It makes me think, though, because the women's game, obviously you host early on. Like, that's something we should think about adding. Like, I don't even know the reason why men don't do that, because that would be kind of cool, like a cool home field advantage here for a couple of rounds.
I think that's part of it, is like Kentucky has the benefit of having two separate arenas for men's and women's basketball. So Kentucky is hosting in women's basketball, and it's the same weekend, but it's not the same venue. They're not even necessarily right next to each other. But yeah, if you look at Tennessee, like, I don't know logistically how one of the teams would have to get displaced, and you would assume the Lady Vols would be hosting almost every year. At least that's definitely the standard that's set there, is to be a top 4 seed into host. So that definitely puts a wrinkle into things. So at that point, I don't know if you have the right venue to put a men's side of it in. But I also know too, there's like, you have to apply to host, and the city and the school would have to come together. So there's a bunch of logistical things that go into it, where I don't know. They've done it before, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know if it'll happen anytime soon until maybe the women's game goes to a neutral site for those first few rounds, if they ever do that.
Interesting. Well, speaking of March Madness here, it's been a couple days. A lot of people are finishing up their brackets here, Ryan, Sylvia. And one of the things that you and I have both had time to think about in terms of what Tennessee's ultimate draw here in the Midwest region. What do you think about this draw? I know you've had a couple of days to think about it. Do you like this for Tennessee?
For the most part, yeah, I do like it. I think that you have to feel reasonably confident that they'll get out of those first 2 games and move on to a Sweet 16. That's where you have a little bit of a holdup, just because almost no matter what, they're going to be in a rematch of some sorts, whether that's Kentucky, who comes through, who you've already lost to twice. So maybe it's tough to beat a team twice, let alone 3 times, or 3 times, let alone twice in one season, comes into play there. Or is it Illinois, who Tennessee beat early in the year, but it feels like a completely different Illinois team right now? And, that might not be the easiest matchup either. Or Texas, who, as we're recording this, is up on Xavier. Maybe that's a game that you don't want to play a third time. Whatever it is, whoever it is, it's going to be a rematch of some sorts. And that feels weird. It feels like, I don't know if that's an advantage for Tennessee, depending on the matchup, maybe, is if it's a game you already won or lost. But there's just going to be that layer of familiarity in that round, which I do think throws a wrinkle into things compared to just playing a good team in that round. I personally have Tennessee moving past Illinois in that round. I could see Kentucky beating an Illinois team, and that being a rematch too, which I also feel good about Tennessee not losing that for the 3rd time this season. And then you're looking at a game that's probably against Houston, but at the same time, Gonzaga's really good. And I know that's a really trendy pick right now, is to have Gonzaga upset Houston and start to make a run. And that feels like a team that, if they are hot enough to get to that round, like, is that necessarily a team that Tennessee would want to face? I feel like that would be a little dangerous as well. But when you compare it to a region like the West that Tennessee was vying for that last 1 seed in, like, I think you have to like where Tennessee came in the West as a 2 seed a whole lot more than you like where Florida is with a 1 seed in the West. Like, I think that was part of the discussion when we were looking at the SEC tournament, is, do you even want that 1 seed? And with the way the bracket unfolded, I think you have to be happy with the 2 seed instead.
Yeah, I think they're in a better bracket. Like, I think this is a good situation for them. Now, they moved up because of the weekend, like with Alabama. They moved ahead of Alabama and get the spot. That being said, they're playing on Thursday. and they played 3 games in 3 games over the weekend, and we'll see. I'm very curious to see what their legs are like, how they shoot the ball, where they're at in the second half, how Barnes handles the minute allocation. Foul trouble cannot be a thing because these guys are on tired legs that you can't have key guys in foul trouble early on. But I don't know. I think this is ultimately, like you said, a good draw for Tennessee. Houston doesn't scare me as much as Duke would
Sure.
in that bracket. I think Houston also could go down absolutely against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. So I look at this and I'm like, a lot could go Tennessee's way. I don't want any part of Kentucky. I think Kentucky, there's just something about that team and the way they're constructed that I don't want any part of that right now. And that just feels like a team that could, like Utah State kind of feels the same way, where if Utah State shoots the ball really well in the second round, like that could be a problem for Tennessee. And I like UCLA. I don't think they're going to be able. It's a barn special, and I understand the barn history there with UCLA, and like there is some stuff there, but like UCLA doesn't, and maybe this is foolish on my end, they don't really concern me as much as a Utah State and then a Kentucky matchup, because I think the odds of one of those two not shooting from three really well and then banking on Tennessee being able to keep up and match it, because I don't know, like that. I want at least one offensively challenged team in that Sweet 16 round of 32. I don't want back-to-back just like high volume 3-point shooting teams in back-to-back games, because it just it's a level of volatility that kind of scares me when it comes to Tennessee, because we've seen Tennessee on the receiving end of those kind of games that did not go well. And obviously Kentucky's beat them twice. Like I know there are some Tennessee fans who are like, bring it on. Let's like they can't beat us 3 times. It's I don't know. Be careful what you wish for. I want no part of Kentucky and how they're able to cause problems for Tennessee on the perimeter. And I think if Tennessee does not have a good shooting game against Kentucky and they got them 3rd time, like they're not beating them. Like I think they would have a problem.
I agree. I think that's a game that Tennessee would hope to avoid. I think you would rather play that Illinois team again and test your luck with that rather than a Kentucky team where it just feels like the system and the scheme is set up to make it more difficult for Tennessee. And you touched on those second round games, and it feels like, yeah, that could be a case with Utah State as well. Like UCLA's slow. They're in the 300s in pace. They're a defensive first team. It feels a lot like Tennessee in those ways. So who's going to win in a matchup? I would take the team that does it way better in Tennessee. Like you're playing the same exact systems, not exact, but you know what I mean? You're playing very similar basketball. So the team that's better at it, you would think is going to win. On the other hand, a Utah State team that comes out and shoots well enough to beat UCLA and feels comfortable in that gym, that is what kind of scares me about a second round game for Tennessee. So I feel like if you're looking at who does Tennessee want to play in the second round, I think UCLA is a much better matchup for Tennessee, one that I'm much more confident in. I think Tennessee wins both of those games. But also, like you said, what are the odds that Tennessee could survive 2 teams like a Utah State and Kentucky back-to-back? I don't know if those are odds that you necessarily want to take if you're trying to make a long March Madness run. While on the other hand, if you can obviously survive Wofford to start and then get a UCLA team who's going to try to get physical and play defense, I like those odds a lot to get into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, you want the teams who try and play Barnes basketball and you just can't. Like UCLA and Wofford, I just don't think they have the horses to win that kind of game against Tennessee. I think Tennessee will be fine. Like that's my hope, is I want Wofford and UCLA in this weekend. Like that's the goal here. But I mean, Utah State is 1 spot ahead of Tennessee in offensive rating. Like they're 17th in KenPom, and Tennessee is right behind them. So I just look at where they're at in that regard. And I don't know. I think Utah State is not somebody that Tennessee wants early. Like I think that could be, if you don't get Gonzaga or Houston for a while, I think Kentucky too. I mean, just if you look at teams in their side of the bracket that could cause Tennessee problems, you just don't want a bunch of high volume 3-point heavy teams and teams that shoot the ball well. And Kentucky's in this bracket, Houston's in this bracket, Gonzaga's in this bracket, and Utah State, all better than you in offensive rating right now in KenPom. And I just think you want to avoid as many of those kind of teams as possible. It doesn't mean you'll be able to avoid them all, but that doesn't mean that you can't root for Georgia to knock off the Zags. It doesn't mean, like, you want more teams that are more like Barnes and Tennessee, because I don't think anybody else can play the style that Tennessee can. Outside of like Chris Beard, who did a great job at Ole Miss and beat Tennessee that way. But I don't know. I think by and large, you want the slow pace. You want teams who cannot take advantage of your potentially really tired legs going into this weekend. That's why I think Wofford's just a good Thursday game for Tennessee. Is like it's gonna be slow, and I think Tennessee might be able to coast. And it's not gonna be a Louisiana situation where we were sweating and really didn't know how that game was gonna go a couple of years ago. And I don't think that's gonna be the case. I think Tennessee's gonna be able to coast against Wofford. Like I think blowout. My gut is blowout. Is that the same for you?
I feel good about it. Like I think it'll probably be a healthy like 20, like 15 to 20 point win, which I mean you definitely take. Tennessee's not immune to getting scared by 15 seeds in their days, so I mean I think you definitely take a comfortable win like that. I just don't see a team like the team that scares you to make a splash against Tennessee is the Utah State type of archetype, where their defense is atrocious with Utah. Like it's a horrible defense that's playing worse as the season's gone on. But man, they can get hot quick. And when you get a feisty mid-major, which Utah State's not necessarily mid-major, but like those type of schools that get hot quick like that's when you get scared, when it's just like, hey man, they're not missing. There's nothing you can do, and they're not missing a shot. And anyone in the country would lose to them on this night, it feels like. And Tennessee might not have the offensive fireworks to get back in a game like that, where you compare that to a Wofford who's trying to grind you down. And once again, like that's what Tennessee wants to do, and they're going to do it at a way higher level than a Wofford or UCLA is going to. So I think that's just the most preferred matchup, and it's part of the reason that you have to like Tennessee's pool is you should feel pretty good about escaping those first two rounds, assuming that, I mean, even if it is Utah State, you should feel that way, but assuming it is the higher seed UCLA, especially, like this team is given as pretty like nice of a path as you could ask for to get to that second weekend.
I agree. What do you make of Jahmai Mashack's game of late? We kind of bounce around with different guys each week here. Ryan, what do you make of Mashack's game the last week or so?
I thought Mashack's kind of, I mean, he's a consistent player. Like, you know what you're getting out of Jahmai Mashack almost every single game. You're going to get the lockdown defense. You're not going to get much on the offensive end. Every once in a while, he'll step up and hit a big three or two. But like the Florida game, he only scores a point, but his defense was there. Like, you have to like what he gave you on that end. Against Auburn, you get points at the free throw line, but once again, the defense is there. And against Texas, he does a little bit more. He was able to get into the lane and do things like that. And once again, the defense was there. So, I mean, that's not anything new. You know, the defense is kind of his calling card, but especially just kind of the way he's talked to the media recently about feeling a little slighted about some postseason awards and using that as motivation, and, you know, saying like, hey, he's like, I love Zakai. Zakai's my teammate. Obviously, he's one of my best friends. I love him. He deserves these awards. But at the same time, you know, why am I not in that conversation too? Why are we not co-defensive players of the year? Why am I not on some of these watch lists and things like that? So I not only think that you're getting a Jahmai Mashack that's hungry because it's a senior season, because he doesn't want to go out early in his last hurrah with Tennessee, but a Jahmai Mashack that really, really wants to prove that he does belong at those lists at the top of defenders in the country. And I think that's a perfect storm to get a really aggressive and hopefully, I guess, a smart Jahmai Mashack to not pick up fouls too, but like an aggressive defensive Jahmai Mashack, which could be havoc for a Wofford team or a UCLA team where offense is already maybe a little bit harder to come by. And all of a sudden now, you not only have to deal with Felix Lekpar in the paint, you not only have to deal with Zakai Ziegler picking you up 94 feet sometimes, but a wing defender who can guard 1 through 5 in Jahmai Mashack that's really hungry to move, to kind of, I guess, prove his worth.
Yeah, I think you're right, where it's like you just know what you've got. Like, it's just, I know what I'm going to get from Jahmai every game to this point. And I think you need that, because the guy that he's going to be splitting time with the rest of this tournament at the 4 is someone you have no idea what you're getting. Over the last week, you know you're not getting good play. I think is probably, I mean, that Igor Milicic had a really, really rough weekend for Tennessee. And I mean, we've talked about it on this program of like, is the best closing 5, Ryan, is it Zakai, Chaz, Gainey, Mashack, and Akpara? And I think most of lately definitely has been that. And I think Igor, foul trouble, different things, not rebounding as well as he used to. It's just there's a lot of different things going on with Igor that's been troublesome down the stretch here. But he's also like in the full Olivier Conlois zone. And it's just, it might be Utah State where he just comes off and he goes for 24-7 and bails Tennessee out from a hot shooting night from the Aggies or something. But I don't know. I think Mashack, I could see this being a huge, I mean, he was great for Tennessee when think about like 2 years ago now, which feels like forever when Sakai went down, and Mashack had a great tournament. Like Mashack led the charge against Duke. I mean, he's having to play point guard for Tennessee, given the circumstances. Like he's played every different kind of role that Tennessee's asked him to. And right now, I think the role they need the most this tournament is stretch four. Like we're gonna need you to guard above, like what you're maybe more comfortable with. You're gonna have to bang with some big guys. You're gonna have to dive for a lot of loose balls. Like he's gonna get banged up this tournament is because they're so thin. And if Cade's not locked in and Igor's in foul trouble or struggling, like Mashack's gonna have to play a bunch of the four next to Akpar. And I think he's gonna fight and he's going to play well for Tennessee. But I think he's one on a team in the big department where you don't know what you're getting with half that rotation. Mashack being as versatile as he is has been huge for Barnes and Tennessee down the stretch, right?
Yeah, no, it has been huge. And I agree that that's probably their best lineup is just subbing on Jordan Gainey for Igor Milicic, which does make you go smaller. So yeah, you're right. You do need Jahmai to step up and guard bigs. And that's something he's plenty capable of. We'll see. I mean, that's something I think you'd rather rely on maybe later in the tournament than early in a weird way, because it can be so physically taxing. And with these short turnarounds, like that's hopefully something that they don't necessarily need in this first weekend too much, but they're going to need Igor. Like he is going to have to play some sort of role. And when I talked to Cade Phillips about what Igor's role on this team is, I thought his answer was interesting, where he's like, we want him to guard well. We want him to rebound the ball extremely well and stretch the floor. And that doesn't necessarily mean you hit 4 threes a game, but like just be a presence out there. And everything else he does on top of that, the flashy moves, the great passes, the cuts to the rim, and when he goes off scoring, that's just all the extra stuff on top of it that his talent allows him to do. But at the base of his game, he needs to be a really good rebounder, and he needs to play defense, and he needs to kind of be that glue guy, I guess, that kind of puts the missing pieces together for Tennessee. And that feels like, he's been kind of able to do that at times when the scoring's not there, but then you see other games where the scoring's not there and then the rebounding numbers dip, and some of the other ways he impacts the games dips. So I think for Tennessee, once you get out of this first weekend and you get a rematch with Kentucky or a rematch with Illinois and you get to the Elite Eight and you're playing a team like Houston, like I don't know if you can get away with an Igor Milicic that is in foul trouble, or an Igor Milicic that's not rebounding or playing his role in one of those ways. Like they do need him to step up and be a big piece of this team.
But are you betting on that going into this week?
I don't want to say it's all Igor why I think this way, but I'm not, like, it's tough for me to see them getting to the Final Four in some ways because of the inconsistencies. And that's not just an Igor thing, right? Like that's Cade Phillips. He shows up some games and doesn't other games. Charles Lanier, like the first 2 games of the SEC tournament, he looks fantastic. Like he was unstoppable. And then the next game or the finals game comes up and he wasn't bad, but he wasn't scoring at that clip that Tennessee probably needs him to. And even when he was going off in that Texas game, he scores like 18 of the first 22 points, 24 points. Then he kind of disappears the rest of the game. So like you're going to need that to be spread out a little bit. You're going to need some consistency there. So just the volatile nature of this team kind of scares you from picking them to go extremely far. Like the ceiling's a national championship. I'll keep saying that, and I believe that. Like this team is plenty capable of doing that. But if you had to bet on it, like it's tough to say that they don't have a game where they don't fully show up and get caught on the way there.
I think that's fair. Switching gears, Lady Vols, their path to the Sweet 16. I think it's interesting. It's, I think, doable. It will likely mean they will have to beat Ohio State. Do you think that is doable, that Tennessee, based on what you've seen? Because I think, what are they? Are they 10-9 since their hot start? Is that how they finished, I want to say?
That sounds about right. I mean, they didn't lose an out-of-conference game, so all of a sudden you get to SEC play and things got tough for them.
Yeah, because I think they're 12-0, right? And then because they're 22-9, if I remember correctly, right?
Mm-hmm. And they must. Yeah, I mean that sounds about right with the SEC tournament include. I don't know the exact.
But it
number.
didn't feel like it, right? Like it didn't feel like they went 10-9 over the last 19.
Yeah, because I mean it helps that you beat a UConn, you do all those.
Yeah.
Things. They had the peaks, and even I mean a lot of the losses too. Like don't necessarily feel like losses in a year one. Like there's no moral victories or anything like that. But it's like, hey man, you lose to LSU by a bucket. You lose to Oklahoma. Like some of those losses, especially at the beginning, were like, hey, you kind of get a pass the first time that happens. You go on the road at Texas without Kim, and you play really well. You kind of give them a pass in some way. But man, they should have no issue with South Florida. They should be able to move past that, get to the round of 32. I'm pretty confident there. Can they beat Ohio State? Sure. Will they? I don't think so. And it's a similar situation to what we were just talking about on the men's side, where Tennessee welcomes a game with UCLA because they play so similarly, and Tennessee's a better team at it. Well, Ohio State plays really fast too, and they are one of the top teams in tempo in women's basketball. And to play a team that's so comfortable with it for Tennessee, I don't know if that's a favorable matchup for them. Like I think the way Tennessee beat a 4 seed is if they got a team that played so different than them that they could kind of take advantage of some areas. But when you're playing an Ohio State team that's comfortable in this and wants to do this too, like it's going to be a track meet and Tennessee's capable of winning it. You're going to need some players to step up here and there, but it just feels like for the same reason you really like Tennessee to beat UCLA, even though the seed disparage is much different from a 4-5 than a 2-7. Like you still think it has to play into Ohio State's hands a little bit, especially on their home court.
I like it. Switching gears here, Ryan. What now with Destinee Wells out for the rest of the season for the Lady Vols? It's been a rough 2 years for Destinee in this program. I mean, what changes for Tennessee down the stretch here?
I mean, nothing really changes. She wasn't in the rotation. She wasn't getting any minutes outside of kind of the blowout minutes or the getting blown out minutes, and it stinks for her. She's battled a lot of injuries at Tennessee. Last year, she came in. She had a role as one of the guards and suffered a season-ending injury, and then she came back this year and she just never really looked like the same player. It always looked like that leg was bothering her, and that's someone that was so good at Belmont. And who knows what her career would have looked like. Maybe she would have adjusted well to the SEC. Maybe it would have been an uphill battle still if she could have stayed healthy. But it's just been a rough 2 years in terms of what that changes for the Lady Vols in March Madness. Nothing really. She unless Tennessee was up a bunch or down a bunch, she probably wouldn't have played. So at the end of the day, it's unfortunate for her. You hate it for her. You of course wish she was healthy, but it doesn't really change the outlook of the team.
Do you think she's back next year?
I would be pretty surprised. She does have a year. She could use it if she wanted to. I haven't necessarily heard anything that points towards her returning, but you never know. The door's open, so you'll have to see what she chooses. But I would be a little bit surprised if she did.
Well, if she does use this last year of eligibility and go somewhere else, there might be an obvious connection. The person that she came to Tennessee for, Kellie Harper, now at Mizzou. I mean, is that an option? And then this just kind of leads into what you think. Kellie Harper, the new women's basketball coach at Missouri.
Yeah, I was, you see the coaching searches come up across the SEC, and Kellie's name was tied to a few of them. The Auburn job as well. People talked about her, being tied to, and that
would have been weird, man. Like Bruce Pearl and Kellie Harper both being that would just be so strange.
Which is funny because we were talking about, like, oh yeah, they're familiar with each other. It's like, well, are they? Because she played before he was here, and then she came back to coach after he was gone. So there was never really any sort of overlap. I'm sure they've shaken hands at some SEC event or something, but it would be weird just from the Tennessee perspective just to see two former coaches over there. But I'm happy for her. It seemed like she always wanted to get back into coaching, so it's nice that she got an SEC job. It's going to be an uphill battle there. Like I don't think they have a lot of NIL money. I don't think they have an insane amount of investment in women's basketball right now at Missouri. So it's going to be tough to get players in, and you're competing against the best teams in the country in the SEC. So you better hope you kind of stack up on some out-of-conference wins maybe before you get to the gauntlet of SEC play day in and day out. But I mean, it makes sense for Missouri in a way, I think. Like you get a coach that's proven. You try to kind of bridge things a little bit after Robin leaves, who's been there for like 15 years. So it makes sense in some ways. It doesn't make sense in other ways. But I am glad for Kellie, who looked like on SEC Network when she did her hits, like it looked like someone that wanted to get back into coaching. So I'm glad she got an SEC job as quick as she did.
She kind of fits in the Dan Mullen thing for me, where she was good at TV. I think she was a good analyst. I think she may have she has a future there, and it's kind of a bummer that she's jumping back into the coaching ranks, and a tough job, like you said. Like, it's always interesting the mindset of different coaches, because you just don't know how these folks are wired, and you look at it where like Dan Mullen's just sitting around, and then he takes the UNLV job, and you're like, what? And like, okay, I guess that's worth you could not pay me enough money to jump into the G5 and the portal era and everything else. Like, where you're just the headaches, and just knowing that if you do well with any of these guys, they're gone. Like, anyone you do well with and you find in the diamond in the rough, whatever, you're like, you don't like the Ashton Ginties are a rarity at that level. So I just think it's just such a tough job. But you look at Mizzou and you're like, okay, I mean, this might be your last job, like your last opportunity as at a big job is Mizzou, and it's an SEC job, so you take what you can. But like you said, it's tough, and I mean, we'll see how long you get, but I mean, you saw Mizzou in the men's side; they just went over in the SEC last year. The baseball program's the worst in the SEC. Football has had a little bit of juice there for a little while, but I don't know how much you could say right now. I mean, you got Oklahoma and Texas now in the conference. Like, I don't know. Like, part of it is, look, if you want to coach, you coach, and it's still an SEC job, you jump back in. But then there's other parts, like, that you got to be kind of proactive. Like, that fired coaches, like in the NFL too, where they, like, you have to make sure, like, once you've been fired, you're like, you're not getting 3. Most people don't get 3 opportunities in the NFL. So you got to be very careful where you take that next job, because it most likely will be your last. And I don't know. I think it's a risk, but it's I think everyone's rooting for it. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the reaction to Kellie Harper getting this job, because I think everyone rooted for her, wanted it to work out in Tennessee, and I think when she's not playing Tennessee next year and going forward, they'll, I think, be rooting for Kellie and hoping that she does well. It's just, the reality is, like you said, it's a tough job, and this is probably her last opportunity as a big time college basketball head coach.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, she was a player here. She won 3 championships. Pat Summitt talked great about her all the time when she was a player, and she clearly wanted it to work at Tennessee. Like, you could tell the passion she had for Tennessee, whether that was the Lady Vols program or her showing up to football games and things like that. So she understood the culture. Like, obviously she was here and experienced it. So I think fans gravitate to that. And I don't think there was hard feelings for Kellie Harper, the person, or anything like that when she was fired. So I do think fans will gravitate in a way to what she's doing over at Missouri in a passive way. Like you said, like, she's in the SEC, but I think they'll want to see her do well. It is tough though. Like, it is rare you get a 3rd strike. Like, it's usually you get 2 strikes and you're out in coaching, and she's getting her 3rd. And it's like, is it unfair to say Missouri's the worst athletics program in the SEC? Like, I don't know. Vanderbilt's having their kind of moment right now. That's, saying they're having,
or Mississippi State's probably in there.
Mississippi State's probably in there. It's funny because you're like, well, Vandy's having their moment and they're finishing 10th and everything, and that's still just like, oh, that's fantastic for them. They're having a renaissance of sports over there, and football's worse than ever. But like, you went over the Missouri stuff. Like, they're bad in a lot of stuff, and when they're bad, they're really bad too. Like baseball and women's basketball this last year,
men's basketball last year,
and Dennis Gates. I like Dennis Gates. I think he's doing a good job there, and that ship should be steadied a little bit after last year. But you saw how scary things can get in the SEC when you're not necessarily prepared. So we'll see what Kellie can do there. It's going to be a tough situation. I guess she thought it was the best opportunity for her, and I'm sure she wanted to get back into coaching sooner than later. So it's definitely an SEC job. It's definitely not a bad one necessarily. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to win games in conference there.
Absolutely. Final thing here, Ryan, Sylvia, as we do every week, we talk Ruby Whitehorn at this spot last week. Zee Spearman, though, down the stretch, how has she fared for the Lady Vols in your opinion?
Yeah, she's been on and off in some ways. Like, I think you have to like the rebounding she's given you. She grabbed 10 against Vanderbilt in the game they lost in the SEC tournament, and she's been pretty consistent on the glass. Some games more than others. Like, she wasn't a big factor against Texas A&M in that blowout win, but at the same time, she scored in that game. So you're kind of getting one or the other sometimes. Like even in the Georgia game that they lost on Senior Day, she scores 19 points but only grabs 4 rebounds. So you would like to see her be able to contribute in both categories going forward, especially when you do get to presumably the Ohio State game in the second round. I think she's important. I think post play is important when you get to these NCAA tournaments, and she's the best option they have down there. So it'll be nice to see her get back on track. I think you have to like the play she's given you. It's just her and a handful of other players in the Lady Vols. And the men's team too. I mean, it's basketball, so you can kind of say this about most teams, but like just those handful of players where some games they look really, really good. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if she went out against USF and dominated and scored 20 plus points. Like, she's capable of doing that, especially against some of those teams that she has those high advantages on. But then I wouldn't be surprised if she turned around against Ohio State and struggled a little bit. But then at the same time, you wouldn't be surprised if she went out against Ohio State and had a good game. So it's a toss-up sometimes. It's a fight to find some of that consistency. But first year with Tennessee, obviously, first year with the program or the system, obviously, and she's someone that's really had to adjust to things. Like, she was doing very different things at Miami than she is now with the Lady Vols. So I think you're starting to see her get a little bit more comfortable, which is starting to lead to increasing consistency, and maybe that can translate into next year where she could really take a step towards being one of the better players night in, night out.
Ryan, Sylvia, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at volreport.com this week?
Yeah, March Madness time, so we'll have coverage of the men's and women's tournament, seeing how far the Vols and Lady Vols can make a run this year. Baseball coverage, of course, somehow we're already in SEC play. Softball, we do weekly recaps, so if you want to keep up on what the softball team's doing, we have you covered every Monday, or I guess this week they play Saturday to Monday this week, so we'll have it on Tuesday on what they're doing. And then football coverage, a little break, spring break action for football and spring camp, but we'll be back next week and getting the coverage over there from the football facility as well. It's the total crossover season, and we have you covered everything Tennessee athletics.
I love it. Ryan, Sylvia, always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the week, and I'll talk to you again next week.
Appreciate it, Chase.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.